Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the May edition of the Astroimaging Special Interest Group. Before we get to our main presenter this evening, we're going to take a few minutes and do our beginner's corner as we've done the last several months. We have any new folks this is the first time on the Zoom call? If you'd like to raise your hand and introduce yourself, unmute yourself and introduce yourself. Please feel free to do so. All right. Any of you folks who have beginners questions, feel free to jump in at any time and ask those. I think Jeff is going to give us a brief tour of what he's put together in terms of some of beginners' resources that are going to show up on the TAAA website.
Actually, they're there now because when you update a page and you press the update button, it's instantly live, as I discovered this afternoon. So while folks think about their questions, let me provide a quick tour of what we've done. Some of the content on the TAAA AISIG pages was really dated. It still talked about meetings at Total Wine and had a picture of a classroom setting. Everybody seeing the screen now, the website?
Yes.
Great. So what we've done, with thanks to so many of you, is we've updated the content. We've got some fresh images. We've described now our current mode of operation. We've got our updated meeting dates, and now we have announced a mentoring program for new members to formalize what so many of the members of this group have done, certainly as long as I've been around, is provide coaching, counseling, mentoring to newer members. And we're going to try to formalize that and try to match people up who wish to participate with people who have relatively more knowledge about the particular hardware or software that a beginner might be interested in using. We then have redone some of the other content. I'll start with the things that are currently up to date. The members gallery used to be pictures from Dean Salmon and Larry Phillips and others, some of which go back 15 years. So I pushed those all the way down to the bottom, and we are adding an individual image, which is hyperlinked for each member who wishes to post an image and connect to their personal website, AstroBin page, whatever. So just as a, for instance, here's Randy Smith's Sharplist 224. You click on it, you're on Randy's AstroBin page. So we'll keep this up to date. The nice thing about this is instead of posting a whole bunch of pictures per person, we can post one picture for each individual member, and then people can browse around their websites or AstroBin pages. Now, this does mean, of course, that to participate, you have to have a publicly available page for images, but I'll leave that to you. So this is going to be a work in progress. If you're interested in adding yourself to this list, just shoot me a note. My email if you've got it. Otherwise, you can just send me a private message through groups.io, and I'll tell you the couple of little items I need, and we can go from there. And then the other thing that we've done on a general observing resources page on the website, we have updated and built out a section on astroimaging. And what we've collected here are resources that a group of us found useful to us when we were relatively new to this hobby or are still using. whether it's things like Telescopius and astronomy tools, Astro Backyard, the IM Compendium, all terrific resources. So our hope is that we can help newer members get started with some good resources here. This too is a dynamic list, which we would love to update. So if take a look, if you have a favorite piece of content or a book that's not on here, let me know. And then the other thing, which is still a work in progress, we've long had links to past AISIG meetings. This page is largely the same as it's been for the last few years. I think the most recent entry is from April of last year, so not as bad as 15 years ago. We also, if you weren't aware of it, we have a YouTube page where Greg posts our various meetings, although nothing is showing up here, Greg, since April of 23. That's a subject for offline. So that's where we are. I invite you all to take a look at the page. I guess I have fallen into the role of playing AISIG webmaster, although Ed Foley can also update content. But if you see something that we can improve, let me know.
Great. Any questions for Jeff? Okay, I encourage those of you who've been posting your great images to the forum to send one of those images to Jeff along with your AstroBin or other portal information and get yourself on the member gallery.
Now, it's a lucrative thing to do, right?
Yeah. Only if you're selling your images, I guess. Any beginner questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
Since I've been in the back of the image train realm now for a while for Galaxy season, I'm shooting at f7, which is not what I thought it was going to be exactly, as opposed to being spoiled on the Hyperstar and getting all my images in an hour. I wanted to know about, like last night, I decided to just see what I could do before I shut down my scope until it gets darker out. And I decided to shoot the, well, you can see it on my screen here, the dumbbell nebula. And at first I was having a bunch of issues. I was trying to use my IDAS NBZ UHS filter because I thought it could bring out the narrowband colors out of it. That was not working well at all. I was really having a lot of trouble plate solving. And also, even if I wasn't using that filter with my light pollution filter, the Antlia Tri-Band RGB Ultra, I was having a lot of problems just in getting my polar alignment right. At first I had it like in the bullseye and I was trying to get it a little better without chasing my tail too much. And all of a sudden it just freaks out. And then when I finally got it all set, which took longer than normal, then I was trying to slew to this image in particular, and it was above the horizon. It saw plenty of stars, but it couldn't center the image. And I'm wondering if that's due to the moon being at 80% plus illumination at that f-stop, if that would be a typical thing that's going to cause problems when normally it doesn't have issues with that.
Dave, I can chime in from the standpoint of an f6.3 user, so not all that far off. I've not had any problems. I generally do my focusing with a luminance filter in place so that I don't run into issues. But my first thought is lengthen your exposure time for the plate solving images. I suppose the moon. How close were you to the moon? Angular degrees?
Oh, I'm in technically a Bortle 4 area.
No. I know, but last night, how close was M27 to the moon?
Oh, it wasn't. I was facing east.
Okay, so that.
It wasn't a
wouldn't have
problem
been a
with that.
problem. Others, I'm sure, know better than me, but my first thought, when anytime I've had problems like that, lengthening the plate solve exposure has solved them.
Hey, Dave, this is Kevin. The times I've had a filter in, I haven't had any hiccups with plate solving either. But if it doesn't see enough stars, I'll do what Jeff suggested and, up the exposure from 2 seconds to 3 seconds or 5 seconds just to make sure it gets enough. Because the filter does cut down some light.
Yeah, I think it was already set at 5 seconds, and it said it could find 500 some stars. It just couldn't find the center. And this is using the ZWO ASI error.
It couldn't center the target. If you went to that little,
Exactly. That was the biggest problem I was having.
if you went to that little diagram of the constellation in the lower left, which sort of takes you to the ASI's planetarium program, did it know where it was?
Yeah, it had the target right there. It just couldn't confirm the center. So if I wanted to go into plan mode and start running it wouldn't, because it was still telling me was. Now eventually I got it to work. And maybe it wasn't high enough above the horizon, and that was the problem. But I was able to get it to work once I changed from the IDAS-NBZ filter to the Antlia tri-band filter. It was working, and I think maybe there was a problem because technically that IDAS filter that I have now is designed for wider f-stops, as say
yeah.
f4. But then according to the specs, it's not that far off from the new version, which is supposed to be able to be like the Ultra on the tri-band filter, which is supposed to go to anywhere from f2 to f7 or so. So
Yeah.
I think it was maybe that filter was causing the problem.
But the camera was still seeing 500 stars. So
Yeah, I know, that's crazy.
yeah, that's weird.
I had the same thing happen with M13. I was trying to shoot that a couple of weeks ago, and it couldn't center it to confirm it.
Question, the image that we were looking at, did you crop that at all, or is that essentially the scale you were looking at?
Oh no, well, first of all, this is cropped because of zoom. So if you look at my AstroBin link, it's different. Yeah, I had to crop it, well over 60% to get it to that point. I think it might have to do with the horizon as well. That's my theory, at least, because certain objects, like this one in particular, M27, once it got a little bit further up in the horizon, I was able to do everything I needed to do to start shooting.
Yeah, the other things to check are to make sure that the time is set correctly on your system, and that the pixel scale hasn't changed when you're changing filters.
Yeah.
At that focal ratio, you have a pretty small field of view, and so it wouldn't take a great deal of difference to throw to throw the system off.
Yeah, and that reminds me, a few nights ago, I had similar issues, and I was having issues with guiding, and the problem was my camera was set for 50 as opposed to 100 in terms of the speed of the camera, or whatever you call it.
You mean gain? You're talking about gain?
Yeah, the gain. For some reason, it got switched to 50, and I might have hit the screen on my phone accidentally and changed it. And then once I changed it to 100, which is the native gain for it, it was working fine. These little things can drive you crazy. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that the moonlight that we had, that illumination, affected my polar alignment. It made it more difficult than it had to be.
All right. Okay, well, I'm gonna turn it over to lad Lindsay. Kevin, you got a question?
Steve, I think Steve might have had a question because I've been trying to help him with a focusing issue on an SCT with Echos, and even though I know the EAF, I don't know either of those systems well, but I guess you guys probably know better than we do.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. You know, I'm at a much more basic point than most of you. And I find myself in this, I can't get the telescope focused. So I don't want to be using eyepieces, but I sort of fall back on them as the only way I can see anything. How to get the telescope into rough enough focus that it can be autofocused. I've got the 8-inch Smith Cassegrain from Celestron. I've got the ZWO EAF, and I've got the ZWO 533 cooled camera. Kevin's been helping me some in the last few days. The first problem that I had was I was definitely in the wrong zone. I was at something like 40,000. I didn't even know what the real maximum was. I was just taking someone's idea of defaults. And I have now realized that with 42 revolutions in the focuser knob and 5,760 steps per revolution, there's you know, like 217,000 steps is the theoretical maximum. I don't know where to be. I thought I was getting somewhere because the software was actually saying there were stars, but then Kevin pointed out this morning that since I hadn't really been paying attention to the cooler on the camera, these were just what do you call them?
Hot pixels, likely.
Hot pixels, and they weren't stars at all.
Yeah.
And
I
so
have
I
a-
still don't know where I want to be. And also I am trying to use the ECOS software and the StellarMate. And I wasn't able to get close enough to really say that I was seeing stars. I will say that at a couple of times in the past, and I've had this rig for about a year, all this stuff was working. And I don't know what's going on with it now, but I can't. It worked by accident. I didn't know what the heck I was doing.
Can I make a suggestion, please?
I am here
okay.
to hear all the suggestions
All right.
you might want to make.
If you're way off on focus, which it sounds like you probably are, and you can't get close, my suggestion, and did you say you're using Hyperstar with your?
No, there's no
okay.
Hyperstar involved.
Okay, all right. If you can see an image on the camera, you know, a live image in preview or whatever it is in that system.
Yeah.
Okay. Aim it towards a distant object, disconnect the EAF, and run the focuser by hand all the way to the end travel. Now you're shooting at f10, it sounds like.
Yes.
Okay, run it all the way back to the most rear position, and then bit by bit start moving it forward until you can see your distant object and get it fairly focused. Then reconnect your EAF, because it is so hard if you're trying to use that EAF and you're way off. You'll get there much quicker by turning the focuser by hand. And if the EAF is, all you have to do is back off the 2 grub screws on the end that's on the motor Well, you could actually do it either way, so that the EAF motor is not engaged. Then you can turn that easily by hand and get your rough focus. And you need to do this during the day, you know. And and you may, well, let's see. I don't think you'd have a problem with F10 probably with too much light. The easiest to do this is before full dark, while you can still see things, and now aim it at that distant object. If you can see any mountains or anything, or even rooftops, because you have to get close enough, and then you can start to work with it. Are you using a batten-off mask at all?
I haven't, if I could see some, I have one, I bought one, and if I
Okay.
could actually see some stars, I might be able
Well,
to
you
use
need
that
to-
thing.
You need to do a rough focus.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do, but I
Well,
can't do it.
Can you disconnect the EAF?
I
and not
could,
do- Okay,
but I have a problem with doing that, which,
well,
you know, after some great difficulty, you know, because the numbers in the software, if you disconnect it, then the software doesn't know the position that the EAF is in.
It doesn't need to.
it probably does. When I've done this, I have disconnected it. I get a rough focus so I can see an object. Then I reconnect. And as long as you're somewhere in the middle of the travel, you got 65,000 steps or so in that EAF. If you're anywhere near the middle, just reconnect it all and you have plenty of travel to go either way. Anyway, that's how I do this.
No,
Okay.
I'll second that motion. I think that's exactly what, because if you were to calculate out the total amount of travel on your telescope, you would find out that it's more than 60,000 counts. So what Randy's saying is exactly right. You need to disconnect that EAF, back it all the way out to one side so you know it's all the way backed out. Then disconnect it. Use your hand to in the daytime to find a distant mountain, anything you can see that will get you close to infinite focus, and then reconnect back up that EAF. But when you're in the center of its travel, you want to get to about 32,000 count, somewhere in there. And then you'll be in a position where when you try and go either forward towards 0 or backwards to 60,000, you will find your focus. But that focus motor cannot go as far as your draw tube can go. And as a result, your EAF is only a small section of that. And so you've got to get to rough focus before you engage that EAF in its center position, so that when you do go forward and backwards, you're already close to focus. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. Somebody told me that somebody in the club, in one of those posts, said that they found it at about 150,000. So,
Well,
I guess
just-
what you're saying, let me try to, can I just try to say what I think you're saying and tell me if I've got it right? I think you're saying that, 0 doesn't really matter. Just be somewhere in the middle and know, what the numbers are once you reconnect, and don't worry about the precise number.
Well, the software sets that value. So you can, if you wanted, you could go and change that value in software, but you don't need to do that. 0 is the front end and 60,000 is the back end. And so you want to be somewhere around 32, in the middle of that focus range for the motor, and then manually focus coarsely so that you can get close to an infinite focus and then re-engage, and you'll discover that your software range from 0 to 60 is working fine for you. And by the way, this has nothing to do with ECOS. This is all about the software value that you use for your 0 and your top end value inside the EAF software. You can go inside that EAF software and, like somebody told you, you could change it to 125, but then you've got you're skewing that range, if you will, up, up into the higher numbers. But in essence, all you've got is 60,000 counts in the software.
So you're saying that the ZWOEF focuser can only do 60,000 steps, and the rest, and whatever else the physical device can do, that doesn't matter because the EAF can't do it.
Yeah, the draw tube has a longer throw than that EAF does. And that's why you want to do a coarse focus first in daytime on some close to infinite target as you can get, right? A faraway mountain, something down the block, whatever you can get as far away, a tree limb, far away. Get that position set and then move your EAF all the way back out from one side to the other and then back into the middle. And once you do that, re-engage the EAF and you'll be able to drive to the right focus. Then you can use EAF software, by the way, to do a V-curve. Yeah.
Okay.
On stars at night.
And I think I would use the moon right now since it's out, it's bright, and
yeah,
it's an easy thing to find. But I would also say I would not put my eyepieces back in there just because that's going to throw you off because it's not at the same focus point as your camera.
So just use the camera all the time until
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I'm going to
Thank
cut
you.
you guys off right now because I want Lad to tell us about what you need to think about if you're going to do remote imaging. So, Lad, if you're ready, you can share your screen.
Okay. Let me see if I can do this. Do you see it? I think.
Yes.
Okay. And so these are my thoughts. I will be honest. I'm open to suggestions about things I may be doing wrong, but this is just a place to start. So let me see if I can work that. Now I have to figure out how to work that. Okay. So by definition, I'm talking about photography versus visual observing, simply because we're talking about something that's remote. And like I said, do as I say, not as I do. There are a few parts that I don't necessarily have working, but I will try and tell you what those are. So it's some of these are just ideas that I'm hoping I can implement correctly. In the past, I've had 2 observatories. What we see here on the screen, this was a SkyShed pod that was in my backyard in San Francisco. Obviously, not all of the equipment's there, but it was nice, as we had conversations about leaving your equipment out in 40-mile-an-hour wind and what all, and you have to worry about things. The pod was a nice thing because the telescope could just sit outside. It stayed out year round. It was polar aligned. And I could just go out at night and open up the roof and start imaging. The downside, as I said, San Francisco, if I got below 70% humidity, I thought I was doing wonderful because normally humidity was anywhere from 70 to 90%. And so that was not ideal. And another thing to think about, you can see how close the end of the scope is to the inside of the dome. So that's one of the other things I'm going to talk about too, but make sure if you get something that you've got enough space. I now have a 12-by-12 observatory of the member observatories out at CAC. It is 130 miles from my home, versus the one that was in my backyard. It was convenient. I could go out, I could touch it. If there were little problems, it wasn't a big deal. It is a much bigger deal now if I want to go out and see the observatory. Pardon the mess in some of these areas. Like I said, size isn't everything, but size does matter. You can see this was something I tried. I had to take this down. This is an 11-inch Raza. But with the hood, it was above the roof line, and that became a bit of a problem. It also became a problem because in the second image, you can see I have 2 scopes or 2 mounts, and there is a point where they could make contact. And so that was a real problem about that one. So I thought originally when I was going to have the observatory built, I was going to do a 10-by-10. And I thought, for a little bit more, I can get a 12-by-12. and I'm glad I did. I would have only been able to get one scope in there, but you still really have to make sure that you don't make contact between those guys, because you won't hear it. You won't hear when things go bad, I guess, is the main thing. But these are two of the scopes that are out there right now. This is the refractor, which is what I'm using now. It's 130 millimeter stellar view refractor, and then I have a 16-inch Meade on the other side. The question is, what happens if something goes wrong, and how long will it take you to get to the observatory? So you need to really think things through. So I'm a pessimist. Plan for the worst. Assume the power is going to go out. You're going to lose your internet connection. Your computer's going to crash. The roof won't close, and a storm is coming all at the same time. So those are things that I tried to plan for to make sure I can handle. And just this is a little moment of experience here. Is that if you go out and visit an observatory that's 2.5 hours away, make sure that your focus of your off-axis guider is in the right place, because you're going to have to go out there and change it again, and that your cable management is good, that you're not going to be having cables getting caught up on anything. I was watching cameras and I could see cables hanging in the wrong place, so I had to put one of the scopes out of service for about a month until I could get out there again. How will you know if something goes wrong? So I use security cameras so I can watch the stuff. I do turn off the infrared illuminators while I'm imaging, just because it seems like it's causing a bit of a problem with some of the images. So that's just something to think of as well. And if I'm going too fast, you guys can slow me down. Sometimes I just talk fast. What can you do to plan for problems? So first, what can you do to plan for problems? So the Department of Redundancy department, you're probably familiar with them. Make sure you've got some redundancy in there. My personal preference is I don't rely on anything that is outside of my control. Now, you might do it differently if you have a staffed facility where you're at a hosting site and you're paying someone else to watch over the equipment. But otherwise, unknown is unsafe. I think that's actually even a setting inside NINA. But if you don't know that the weather's good, assume it's bad. I use multiple computers. And with those computers that are out there, they are set up to shoot or to boot up on power up, because a lot of computers, when you plug them in, they go into a ready state, but you have to push the button to turn them on. That is, again, a real problem if you're remote. I have multiple computers inside the observatory, and once inside, so I can remote desk into my computers there, and there are multiple computers. And once I get inside, any one of the computers can connect to anything else that's inside the network there at the observatory. I had a situation recently where one of my computers did crash. I couldn't get it to do anything. I had to remote in, shut off the power, and then cycle power, and then I could get back to it. And there's a temptation to expose your router to the outside world, in case you want to try and do some port forwarding type stuff, but you don't want to do that on a regular basis, because your router is probably one of your key points where there's going to be a security area that somebody could get into and could crash your system, or could get in and just take control of your observatory. So like I said, I have one computer for each mount and one computer for general observatory functions. And that allows me to do some redundancy. So any one of the computers could connect to either of the mounts, park a scope if it needs to, or whatever. A UPS. So if a component is critical, so is its power. I have a UPS on each mount, a separate UPS for the roof and weather station, and one UPS for network components and security cameras. So quite a bit of power in there. I can run for probably about an hour without any power, but I hope I don't have to. I also, I use these remote switches, which I can remote into, or actually it's through a web page. I can go and connect to it, and I can toggle the power on any of the devices. So that's how I was able to cycle the one computer that had crashed. And there have been some other times where I've just been able to go in and do it. And because, as you know, if your computer's in your backyard, sometimes you've just got to turn it off and on. Well, I don't want to drive in the middle of the night and do that, so I can do it this way. It also has a feature which I'm not currently using, and I should, but that is if it can't ping, you can tell it what to ping. And if it can't connect to this outside website, it will reset your router automatically. So that way, if you don't have any control, it's automatically going out there trying to recycle the router and all your network equipment so that hopefully it will reconnect when the remote service comes up, or if your internet service goes down. Like I said, weather station, unknown is unsafe. At the time that I grabbed this little screenshot, it was overcast at the time, but it's good to know, how things are. There had been some comments about, well, they have a weather station out at CAC, but the problem is that if you can't connect to it at some point, you have to assume that it's bad, or that the weather is bad and unsafe, and you'll have to shut down the observatory. So this is all connected within the internal network, so all the devices can connect to it. And what would be nice, again, this is on the category of I don't have this, but positive feedback switches. Is the roof closed? It should be able to do this, but there's just a problem with some of the equipment that's out there, and we're trying to get that resolved to get the right piece out there. So when I originally said that, some people suggested that, well, I should just simply watch, get up at 3 a.m. and watch the camera and see if the roof is closed. Unfortunately, that is what I have done sometimes, as well as is the scope parked, because the 16-inch scope that I have in the observatory, it is above the roof line. So I have to make sure that scope is properly parked before I can close the roof. But I need to get those feedback switches on so that I can let it do it automatically, so that I don't have to wake up in the middle of the night to babysit that, because I don't wake up as well as I did when I was a teenager and can't stay up all night. And protecting the equipment from environmental intrusions, moisture and dust. Once that roof is open, number one, you have to worry about rain, things like that. But it's also a possibility that you could have moisture on the roof that might drip off of the roof onto your equipment inside. So that's something you really want to be aware of, and either have your equipment covered in some way so that that doesn't happen. And I won't open the roof if the scopes aren't pointed horizontally, so that I don't get moisture that drips down and would drip onto the optics, just to kind of mess things up. And the other thing is that critters just love chewing on exposed wires, so you want to be careful about that. And physical site security is beyond this discussion. Here's another one that I think is important. And it's before you open the roof to start an imaging session, put something in place that will handle everything if you lose the internet connection. So what I used to do is that general computer that is in there, I had it set so that it always was monitoring the weather station. And if the weather changed, it would close the roof. And then I could image. And while the regular computer was the one or the imaging computer was supposed to be controlling that, if for some reason one of those two computers crashed and the weather was getting bad, I would still be able to successfully close the roof and make sure things were safe. Still having a little bit of a problem with that one because of the 16-inch scope above the roof line and without those positive feedback switches. So that is still a challenge of mine, and it still makes me get up in the middle of the night. And I think another important one, this is kind of off the topic of a remote observatory, but it's all about the data. You spend a lot of time and energy to collect data, so you want to protect it. I use at home, I download the images every night, and I have a RAID controller. RAID stands for Redundant Array of Independent Drives. Used to stand for Redundant Array of Inexpensive Disks, I think, at one point in time. But so the name kind of changes. I have 20 terabytes of the network attached storage where they are mirrored. So I have 10 terabytes of usable space, but I'm lazy. I know I should back things up. I don't do it. And this way, just simply whenever something is written onto the drive, it goes onto two separate drives. If one drive crashes, all the data is still on another drive. So it's a nice place to start and not have to worry about that. And it's just about as fast as an internal drive to your system. But one other note of experience is that if an SSD fails, there's no recovery of that. I had one computer that the SSD went down, and that was a real eye opener. I always thought of the SSDs as being very reliable, and they're normally reliable, but boy, when they go bad, that is a bummer. And that's it. I hope I didn't talk too fast. Any questions?
Lad, do you have a all-sky camera available to you?
I don't have one, and that one I opted not to do because CAC has one, but the weather station has a cloud sensor. So that was really the primary thing there, because it's about the clouds for the most part. Do you agree, or are you thinking that you want to see something else?
Well, yeah, I mean, a cloud sensor is valuable, but sometimes it's the best thing is just look out the window.
Yes. So I do not have one of those. It would be a good idea, but I don't have it.
Yeah, we have a couple of them at our facility, and it's nice to have a couple of different views of the sky. Can be a little confusing sometimes depending on figuring out where north is, but it is sometimes helpful because sometimes the sky looks better than it really is. I guess that's where the cloud sensor is really valuable.
Yeah. Well, and I've found, looking at the all sky camera out at CAC, where it looks like maybe it's not good, but I'm still getting some good images because I'm shooting in such a small little field of view. But yeah, there's always the risk that you're going to lose something. But so in summary, one of the things about a nice thing about an observatory is my scopes are there. They are polar aligned. And when I want to image, I just get on the computer and I do it. I don't have to set up. I don't have to worry about the weather. And that's really nice and convenient. And if I don't want to put a lot of effort into it, I can still have it sit and spend 10 hours on a couple of objects a night and still make some progress. Okay.
On the subject of redundancy, which is interesting, other than redundancy regarding your data and backup of data, how does it work with the general mechanical devices? I mean, you can have duplicates of equipment, focusers, cables, etc., available there, but you still have to physically be there to, say, take apart something that failed and replace it with a new or working component, etc. So how far does redundancy really go for you?
Well, I thought mostly in terms of the computers. The actual physical hardware is pretty much going to do its own thing, and if it's out, I'm out of commission. That's an advantage of having two scopes, though, because I can have both imaging. So I may have to take one scope offline for a period of time until I can drive out there and still image with the other scope. But no, I don't have multiples for multiple focusers on an individual telescope.
Yeah. Even a cable or something coming a little bit loose, could kill off your session.
Yeah.
So physical things I was thinking of in terms of how do you address that? Because, you don't want to drive 2 hours, like you say, just to
Right.
jiggle a cable.
Right. Well, and that's a big part of the cable management, so that the cables are hopefully in places that they're not going to snag on anything. They're wrapped and tied at strategic points, so that I hope that's not going to happen, but it is always a risk.
Yeah.
And that was one of the problems. There was a time when I had the observatory in my backyard in San Francisco where, like at 2 o'clock in the morning, I heard some sounds that didn't make me happy. And it was indeed that I had a cable snag, and I was able to shut it off at that point. But this being remote, I don't have any audio. I can't hear audio there. So it's, yeah, I just have to cross my fingers now.
Well,
I think one of the things that Ladd mentioned at the very beginning was that he originally had an observatory in his backyard. And I think if you're thinking about going into the remote observing mode, that it's a good idea to have everything as much as possible configured to work in your backyard. If it works in your backyard where you can walk outside and kick it if something's wrong, then you're halfway there to remote observing, particularly the computer part of it. But I think, as someone said, that things do go wrong. Cables come disconnected, computers crash, and there are certain things that you can plan for, but still require on-site attention. So, but I think setting things up and having them work in your backyard is the first step to thinking about remote observing.
Yeah. Yeah. If you can't get it to work in your backyard, you don't want to move it 100 miles away. So, okay.
All right.
Do you have any ability to, send a blast out to other members and say, hey, Doug, are you out at Cactus tonight? Can you go into my observatory, or do you get the key John Kalis?
Yeah, there's been some talk about, I think that's the next phase for the TAAA, is to actually have someone out there on site. I tend to go out to CAC when it's closer to a full moon, so there aren't many people out there, and I am the only person out there at CAC. So, yeah, I'm afraid relying on somebody else to go out and handle it for you isn't going to work. But there was one time where I was able to get John to go out there and look at some stuff. And what happened I did forget to mention that you do want a static IP address for your equipment, which I pay for. However, Valley Telecom hasn't yet implemented it. So that was my problem the one time, was that they changed my IP address. So I had to drive out there. It took 5 minutes to figure out that was the problem. And then I got to cuss the whole way I drove home. So.
Yeah, sometimes it is helpful if there's somebody on site who can at least, stick their head in the door and look at your equipment. I had a problem with the digital logger switch, and there was somebody on site who could go in and unplug the computer from one port and plug it into a different one to get it working again. So, yeah, it is helpful if there's people that are familiar with your equipment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Other questions for Ladd?
Okay, thank you.
Well, actually, I have just one quick one again, if you don't mind.
Okay.
I noticed in one photo you had an off-axis guider on one of your scopes.
Yes.
I think it was, well, I forget which one.
Well, they both do. They both do.
They both do. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you a little bit limited? I mean, in terms of using an off-axis guider, normally you might have to rotate it or reposition it, et cetera, to get a guide star, and then frame up your object of interest as well, get everything set up. Obviously, if you're not out there to do that, is that a limiting factor for you with using an off-axis guider?
Technically, I do have a rotator on the 16-inch scope. I have never used it. Okay. This is an advantage of being out at CAC, where it's a nice dark place. I have never had a problem finding a star. Some of them may be really dim, but it has always been able to track without a problem, which I've been thrilled with.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, and the 16-inch scope I'm shooting at f10, so it's not bright.
All right. Before we open it up for general discussion, I did want to mention that we're going to have our monsoon challenge again this year. This will be the 3rd year for it. And in case you don't remember from last year or weren't around, the monsoon challenge is where we have a couple of targets that everybody tries to image during the monsoon season, which is basically starting now and going through July. And depending on how the monsoon goes, we may push it back to even August, but typically end of May, June, and July is the time when I give you a couple of targets and then have you try to shoot one or both of those. And then at the July meeting, everybody gets a chance to show us, you know, how you did trying to combat the clouds. So the last couple of years, we've had some pretty easy targets. So I thought we'd make it a little bit more of a challenge this year. So our first target is going to be the elliptical galaxy M87. And you might say that's a pretty easy target, but there's a lot of stuff in that general area. So, you know, have at it. If you have a wide field scope, you can go after a lot of different stuff as long as M87's in the field. And if you have a long focal length scope, you can zero in on M87 and see if you can find the jet. The second target is the open cluster NGC 6883. NGC 6883. That's an open cluster in Cygnus. So if you haven't shot an open cluster before, or you haven't done one recently, this is a really good target. And it's a different part of the sky, so that you can have a chance to go back and look at it. Again, it's in an area where there's a lot of other stuff in the general area. So if you have a wide field setup, you can have at it that way. Or if you have a longer focal length scope, you can center in on NGC 6883. So I'll put those on line again tomorrow sometime, so that everybody can remember that those are our 2 targets for the 2024 monsoon challenge. Any questions on that? I can see everyone's excited to get out there and start imaging.
These are both RGB targets then.
Yeah, RGB, LRGB, probably not narrowband, but yeah, RGB would work fine for most of these. Okay.
I took one of M87 a while back, and I guess I'm thinking of trying it again, maybe get the jet. But I'm just wondering, would I be better off taking a whole bunch of short exposures to get that?
I don't necessarily think you need to take short exposures, but in the processing, you'll need to cut down the amount of light tremendously, because that particular galaxy tends to overwhelm the frame, and the jet sometimes gets washed out by the size of the galaxy. So my best experience has been with a blue filter. You might, you know, if you have monochrome imaging, you might try a blue filter.
I'm not
A
into
bunch of those.
mine. I don't have a monochrome camera. I kind of stayed away from that. Although I have a narrow band cutoff filter at different wavelengths. It's certain, but it's 4 different wavelengths. And
Give it a try. Give it a try.
That might be a possibility too. I caught just a trace of it. On the last time I did M87, the jet showed on the individual frames, but then when I finally combined it to the composite, it was very hard to dig it out.
And that's the challenge.
That's the challenge.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else have any questions, general questions?
What do you mean by the jet in that image or that M87?
Well, M87 has a very distinct feature that apparently is related to the fact that it has this massive black hole. And the jet is visible even on amateur images if you get everything just right. So I think if you go online and Google M87 jet, you'll find thousands, if not hundreds or millions of images purporting to show it.
Right, thanks.
Any other questions? Any other images that you'd like to share?
Oh, I have a couple.
Okay, do it quickly.
Okay, share screen. Let's see. Let's see, photos. Oh. Okay, you see anything?
Yeah, Thor's helmet.
Thor's helmet? You sure?
Yeah,
Yep.
Okay. All right, I guess I'm showing M83 here.
do you have two screens?
Oh, wait a minute. Let me check. Let me hit this again here. Okay. How about now?
Nope, same image. So we're seeing the one that shows the folder with all of the pictures.
Oh, all right. Okay. I'm trying to get. That one's M82.
If you have an image you can see, can you drag it over to the other screen?
Okay, I'm only seeing one screen here. That's what the problem is. Okay, now I gotta get back here. Oh, I see what I've got here. Okay. Oh, gee whiz, I don't think I'm gonna get that one queued up here. Yeah, I took this, yeah, this one of Thor's helmet I took earlier. Let me see here. Where are they? See all photos. Maybe I can get to that. Let's try this. Dig it out. Oh, here we go. Okay. How about this?
We still see your folder.
Still see my folder. Oh. I don't know why that isn't shown.
Yes, we can see an image. You have a check mark on the one image and your cursor's on it right now.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
M83. Okay, now it's just showing the folder, right? Okay, now what about this? Let's see, you are screen sharing, new share. All right, there I go. Now let's try it.
There we can see it.
Good, now we see.
Okay. Pardon?
Yes, we see it.
Yeah. I took this last just the weekend before last out at CAC. This is a composite of 30 5-minute exposures of M83. 2.5 hours of integration time with the 6-inch refractor working at f6.4 using it's originally an f8 with a field reducer flattener working at 0.8x. So it gives, and an ASI, a ZWO ASI 2600 MC Pro camera. And of course, using the ASI Air, and actually this is the Duo. And you know, somebody was talking about an off-axis guider. And you know, if you're going to operate something remote control, this camera would probably be ideal. Although you wouldn't be able, you'd have to have a way of rotating it if you. However, so far, I've always been able to get enough stars in the field with the 6-inch app shooting through the main scope, and therefore the full 6-inch aperture for guiding. And it's a very simple camera to use. It worked really well. This in fact is the first photo no, that's right. No, that's right. I took one other first. That I took 4 images that night. And this, anyway, you can see that the detail really comes in pretty spectacularly. And these 2 distant galaxies here, you can even see a little bit of structure. So that's what I've been able to get. So anyway, I have one of NGC 4565. Okay. Did you see this? Did it change?
No.
No? Oh, gee. Wait, let me see on that Zoom thing. Oh, okay. Let's see, a new share. Okay, let's see what else I've got on here. Okay. I can't move this thing. No, I guess I can't, it won't let me reach it in a hurry here. Oh, speaking of M87, since we mentioned, might as well show you this. See, this particular version of it.
We can't see it.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I don't know why it's not showing. As I clicked on. Wait, here's another one of M87. It may show. Okay, here we go. Hey, how about now? You can see just a trace of the jet here. Okay, can you see it?
I don't think so.
We're looking at a folder again.
Oh, gee. See, I don't know what it, see, it's not everything is showing up on the screen here. That's the problem. Okay, see, I hit photos here. There's a, and then I hit, okay, then I hit share. Okay. Okay, how about now?
I'm still seeing your folder, Paul.
Oh,
That's really.
can't get rid of that. I can't get rid of that
You know, that's what Mom was doing towards the
I
end.
can't
She
get
didn't
rid
wanna
of that
eat. She didn't
folder.
want to wake up. She wanted everyone to leave her alone. Yeah, she just wanted to sleep. Yeah. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. No.
Alan, you might want to mute.
Yeah. Okay, now let's try this.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. Now
Mhm.
let's try it.
Huh.
How about now?
I
Yes,
mean,
Okay,
yeah.
now if you blow this up, you can see a little of the jet right here.
yeah, it's faintly there, I think.
Yeah, I have this
Right.
unfortunately got some artifacts.
Right.
I couldn't get the,
I know. I
I couldn't bring the share out.
you know what he would want?
couldn't
You
bring
know, I mean,
I'm
is this
sorry.
something he'd want? He would
Who's
want people to
going on? Who's interrupting back there?
down him and give him shots, and he wouldn't want all that probably.
Okay, I couldn't get the jet, bring it out without getting some artifacts on this. But I did manage to get a trace of it coming out here.
Here's a
So
newbie question. Why is it called the jet?
well, it's some material there's a disturbance going on in the very nucleus of this galaxy caused by a massive black hole.
Okay.
That's what that is. It's a bit of a mystery to astronomers.
Right.
A challenge for us.
Yeah.
And it's a challenge for us, definitely. Let's see if I
All
can
right.
get-
Well, that's good. You've got a good start there.
Yeah, well, I'll let's see, where am I? All right, back to Zoom. And let's see, we got new share. No, I can't get it on there.
You can just click stop sharing when you're done.
Okay, I think I'm gonna have to do it. This
There you
thing
go.
is cooperating. I don't know. You tell it to do one thing and it does something else. You ask for a picture and it gives you the folder. I don't know.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Okay, well, thank you everybody for your attention. I'll try to post the recording sometime tomorrow. And don't forget to get out there and get ready for the monsoon challenge.
Thank you.
All right.
Hey, all
Good night.
right. Well,
Thank you.
Good night.
hey.